Hi, everybody. I'm Brittany Lewis, a reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is my colleague, Alan Owensman. He's a senior editor as well as the author of the Current Climate newsletter. Alan, thanks so much for joining me.
Hi, Brittany. Always good to be with you.
You have some new reporting on Tesla, but before we get to it, I want to talk about where the company is right now at the start of 2026. Global sales are down again year over year. BYD, its Chinese competitor, has dethroned Tesla as the world's biggest EV seller. So how is Tesla doing at the start of 2026? Start there for us.
Well, not in a great place when it comes to electric vehicles. The stock is doing fine, which is interesting, but it's disconnected from the reality of the major source of revenue and profit for the company, which is electric vehicles. As you pointed out, 2025, second consecutive annual sales decline, down 6.7%. So pretty substantial, drop. And BYD has now become the world's largest EV maker. They probably also were in 2024, but it gets a little fuzzy because BYD also does plug-in hybrid electric vehicles. So partially powered by gasoline, mostly by battery. They probably outsold them in 2024 as well, but it was a clean beat in 2025 where they were obviously much larger. And so Tesla has lost its, it has been the world's largest automaker for many, many years. It is no more. And it is unlikely that it will be again in the foreseeable future, unless something very dramatic changes.
And how has Tesla reacted to this, at least publicly? How are they spinning this? Are they acknowledging, hey, global sales, yes, they're down. Hey, we were dethroned as the top EV seller. I mean, what does that look like from them?
Silence.
Crickets.
Yeah, I mean, we'll know more on the earnings call, the results call, in a couple of weeks, later this month, whether they take it head on. But thus far, they've not talked about it in any press release. Musk may have commented on it on Twitter, and I just missed it, but I'm not aware of any direct comment. So I would say probably on the 27th when they do their earnings call, maybe then they'll address the topic.
Tesla's often characterized itself as being a company that's ahead of the curve, being not like other car makers. But your reporting indicates that there's at least one way Tesla is like other legacy auto brands, and that's underutilizing its auto plants. Talk to us about it.
Yeah, and this is a huge change for the company. Tesla has been in pure growth mode up until a few years ago. And not so long ago, not only were they, trying to utilize their existing plants. They were talking about a new facility in Mexico, adding a plant in India. And the numbers from 2025 show us that would be a terrible idea right now because they have highly, highly underutilized auto plants. Even in China, which has really been their crown jewel since it opened up in 2020, the biggest source of profits, the biggest source of production, that has rated capacity to build nearly 1 million units annually based on data that came out from China in terms of total sales and exports out of that plant. They did in the neighborhood of 850,000 units of production, which doesn't look too bad if the rated capacity is, say, 950,000 plus. Not too bad. But then you go to the rest of the world and things really look quite different. Tesla doesn't do a plant-by-plant breakdown, so a lot of this you have to just kind of like sort of guesstimate a little bit based on what their sales and activities are in that market. I would say either Berlin in Germany or the Austin, Texas plant are by far the most underutilized right now. Those plants are probably running at only like 50% of their installed capacity. California, Fremont, which is their original plant, probably wasn't as bad as either Texas or Berlin, because that's a very flexible plant. It does Model 3, Model Y, and also Model X and the Model S sedan. And that's the one that's sort of their most mature plant. They probably tend to use that one more, but definitely in the case of the Austin factory and Berlin, very lightly utilized. And at the moment, you could argue Tesla has at least one plant it doesn't need. You could shift things around and totally sop up all of their production needs with 3 plants rather than the 4 that they currently have.
I guess my next question would have to be, why is this happening? Because it doesn't appear that this has always been the case based on your reporting. Tesla hasn't always been underutilizing their plants in this way or this much. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, I mean, the expectation up until about 2023 was this company's in growth mode. And again, that's when Elon was saying by the end of the decade, they wanted to be selling 20 million EVs a year by the end of the decade. That is absolutely not going to happen at this point. There is no hope for that. They haven't even cracked the 2 million mark yet, and we're 2/3 of the way through the decade. So the problem is something we've discussed here previously: underinvestment in new product and finding new hits. The Model Y and the Model 3 have been spectacularly successful for the company, and they account for about 90% of its automotive sales volume right now. The problem is they haven't been able to find new hits. The original model that was a game changer for the company, the Model S, they don't even break out the sales anymore. They're just not consequential. The Model X, which is their larger SUV, same thing. Cybertruck was supposed to be the big hit. As we've talked about in the past, it was not. It was a flop. And this goes back to the manufacturing issue. At the Austin plant where they build it, they had planned on being able to produce 125 to 150,000 units of that model, and they set up the plant to do that, which means you invested in production equipment and all of these things, expecting a lot of volume. It hit the market in its first full year, sold just under 50,000 units. Last year, probably did about 35,000. So it's already in decline. It is a niche model. It's doing, less than a third of the kind of volume that they were hoping. And so that was a big miss. We don't yet know exactly what's coming next, but the challenge for them is they just don't have exciting new models that people are interested in. They're selling cheaper variants of the Model 3 and the Model Y, but that's a decontented product, which means it's not quite as good as the one that they already have. And what automotive analysts that I talk to and industry experts say, it's just not that appealing a product. It has a cheaper price, perhaps, but it's also, it feels cheaper, and it doesn't, it's not as compelling, so people just aren't as interested.
Not using their auto plants to their fullest potential is another problem on a laundry list of issues that you and I have talked about that Tesla can now tack onto. We spent a good part of 2025 talking about a host of issues Tesla faces, including the company not releasing new models, aside from the Cybertruck, and the Cybertruck having lackluster sales. The fact that Tesla was recently overtaken as the global leader in EV sales by BYD, and that Musk has garnered international criticism over his politics. On this list, what is the biggest issue, in your opinion, that Tesla faces?
Well, with regard to Elon, that's the other issue, because Tesla, just doesn't have enough fresh new product. And in the automotive business, product is everything. You're always having to update and invest and come up with new things. And they seem to have assumed for a period of time that they did not need to do that demand for their products outstripped supply, and they did not have to as aggressively update the vehicles, even as they might add some new features on the electronic system and things like that, over-the-air updates to the software. They weren't actually changing the product all that much, and that's been the real issue. In the near term, we don't see a lot of new product coming. The Cybercab, or a version of the Cybercab, may come out mid-year, perhaps. The other issue, though, that you touch on is, with regard to Elon himself. And this is something unique to Tesla. Name another auto company where people are so polarized about the CEO. There's none. I've been watching the automotive space for a while now, more than 25 years. I cannot find a counterpart to Elon in global automotive. He is, in a category of one. He has really turned off a lot of people. Sales just collapsed for the company in Europe last year, down more than a third. And in markets like Germany, for example, down 50%. In the United States, and in California in particular, which has been, the core of their EV sales in North America. We don't have the final numbers yet from the state of California on what the company did here, but they were probably down in California in a ballpark of like 20% plus year over year, which is shocking because everyone needs to sell in California. Especially now with the loss of federal incentives, if you want to keep your EV business alive, you got to be popular in California, and he's just not. And the reasons for that, are many. It's his public comments, his behavior. Go to his X account and just look at it on any given day, and it's rather disturbing, and it's hard to believe that these are comments being made by a public company CEO. So he isn't going to change his behavior. He has not had this come to Jesus moment where he's decided, you know what, I need to change my act. I need to tone it down. No, absolutely not. He is friendly with the Trump administration again after a break last year. It appears that he's moved back into Trump's good graces. So that he is definitely the people that he turned off last year. He's done nothing to bring them back, and I think that is an ongoing issue for the brand in terms of how it's perceived. Again, it's the Michael Jordan rule, like. Republicans also buy sneakers. Like, you just keep your politics out of it. It's not really a smart business move for anybody, regardless of what your views are. He doesn't roll that way, and he's not changing when it comes to being polarizing.
And now he can add to the list that Tesla plants are being underutilized. I mean, how big of an issue is that specifically for Tesla? Because this is not a problem that's unique to this car company.
That's right.
Other legacy automakers have this problem as well.
Yes, and this is the first time Tesla has found itself in this situation because, again, up until a couple of years ago, it's a pure growth story with their automotive business. Their utilization rate was approximately 70%. Last year, which doesn't sound that bad. That's in line with kind of the global industry average. A company like Toyota or Hyundai, they're probably a little bit better. The Europeans might be a little bit worse. But Tesla to just be like at best average is not something we've seen before. And as mentioned, in their rush to open new plants, they probably moved faster than they should have. Because at the time they just saw limitless growth. This is a mistake. So they've poured billions and billions of dollars into these facilities. You have to amortize those costs over multiple years, and the rate of paying back the initial expenses, the multi-billion-dollar expenses, gets longer if the plants aren't utilized as well as they should be. And again, it's probably Berlin and Austin that are the most problematic. But to address this is one thing that is unique about Tesla. Musk is pivoting a bit. And I talked to an analyst at S&P saying, like, yeah, this is a big difference where they don't necessarily have to just make cars. And what we've discovered was at the shareholder meeting in November, Elon Musk mentioned that the Fremont plant, they're setting up an assembly line there to build Optimus humanoid robots. I think his goal is that Fremont would build as many as 1 million of these things a year. And then they'll also probably be replacing that Cybertruck line with a robot line in Austin at some point as well. That's very interesting, and it's good if you can utilize capacity that you're not otherwise using. But it takes us to this other question. Is the Optimus an actual product that's ready for the real world in the near future? We don't know. He describes it as kind of an all-purpose, do anything kind of robot. It could do chores for you around the house. It could work in a factory, basically be almost like a companion. I mean, he keeps comparing it to C-3PO from Star Wars. And Musk seems particularly excited about this product and sees, millions, billions, if not trillions of dollars of sales in the future coming from something like this robot. I haven't spoken with a lot of experts who share his enthusiasm with the timetable and the speed and the demand. We are seeing a lot of activity in humanoid robots, not just from Tesla, from a lot of places. The one curiosity in Tesla's case is it's not a specified use case. So he's saying, we're going to sell this robot and it's going to do this and this. It's going to do these two things that help humans and make life better. So really, really well-defined application. He's talking about it like the way ChatGPT is kind of an all-purpose, AI platform for to do all sorts of things. It's not one thing. Well, then you have competitors like Hyundai Motor, for example, which acquired Boston Dynamics, which is sort of the real pioneer in humanoid robotics for a couple of decades now. At CES last week, Hyundai also announced a very specific plan to begin producing and using Boston Dynamics Atlas humanoid robot in factories and to do sort of very menial tasks, lifting and moving things that tend to be bad for human workers, where you might get lots of repetitive stress injuries or back injuries in auto plants, which are the two most common types of problems you have with human workers. And they're talking about putting tens of thousands of these to work in auto plants that they operate around the world using a Boston Dynamics robot, but also partnering with Google DeepMind as an additional partner. In that case, they're talking about a very, very specific application. In the future, perhaps the robot could do other things, but they're an industrial company that sees, oh, here's a very targeted use for this thing where it could be a benefit, fewer injuries for human workers, and actually, improve overall efficiency of the plant. So that's quite different than the way Elon talks about Optimus, which dances and, according to a video today, rides horses and does all sorts of things, I guess. So that is kind of sort of par for the course, where one is almost kind of like a pie in the sky, big picture view of something, compared to a competing initiative that's really targeted and really specific and has a sort of a precise timetable and even mentions facilities where these things will be used. So, anyone can decide which one they think is more plausible. Certainly, it would seem that in the case of Hyundai, there's an actual kind of business case they've thought through.
You used a word at the beginning of that response that I think Tesla would wince at, that word being average. The number, just 70% of Tesla's just using 70% of its plant capacity. That's on par with traditional automakers. Tesla is a company, as you and I have said, it positions itself as being cutting edge. It does not want to be called average. The board members of Tesla certainly wouldn't call Elon Musk average, right? They said last year, essentially, he's the only person up for the job. That's why they gave him that historic pay package. He has this, like you said, this pie in the sky idea to how to pivot. Do people in the industry, do experts, do people at Tesla, are they on board with this pivot? And is it going to be a moneymaker for him?
Those are great questions. I mean, obviously, we've seen a lot of turnover at Tesla, a lot of executives who've left, younger, promising engineers and employees who have moved on. Last week, I was visiting with a company that shall remain nameless, which is in the autonomous vehicle space, and their biggest source of new hires is Tesla people. So are people on board with it? I mean, Elon always promises a lot. And historically, his track record is very, very mixed. He has some spectacular wins, going back to Tesla itself at the beginning, really creating the modern electric vehicle market without question. Things would not have developed had Tesla not been the first mover in that space, and he really pushed that. In SpaceX, where lower cost reusable rockets have been a huge game changer in the commercial space industry. So he's accomplished many things. At the same time, he has many other things that he's promised that have not materialized, whether that's the Boring Company, the Hyperloop, all of his promises for Tesla as a solar powerhouse when they bought Solar City 9 years ago. Tesla today doesn't do a lot of solar. They do a lot of batteries for solar power systems, but they don't do a lot of solar. So, when he promises something, his track record is very mixed. There are some huge out-of-the-park home runs, and there are a lot of whiffs. And when it comes to humanoid robots, robotaxis, AI in general, will Tesla be the giant that he promises and he envisions in those space, there's just not enough hard evidence right now to say definitively one way or the other.
Elon Musk has a mixed track record, as you said. Now he's diving into robotics, seems to be wanting to go all in on robotics. Year-over-year sales for Tesla declined. This is paired with, as you and I have talked about, the plant capacity only being utilized at 70%. You're reporting that those things bad, things for Tesla could get much worse in 2026. How so? Talk to us about that crystal ball you see for the next year.
I would say objectively, I don't see how the company increases EV sales this year. So in the absence of some surprise new product that no one has on their radar, this would likely be another year of decline. There are some analyst estimates out there that have the company growing. And when equity analysts that have the company growing global volume, I'm not sure what they see that I don't see. And when I talk to industry analysts who have no interest in the company stock, they too are sort of like, flummoxed when they look at that. I think S&P, for example, who I spoke to for the story, they said at best they're flat. They hold at about 1.65 million units or so in total annual sales. So I don't see any improvement there, which means revenue does not grow. They're doing good business in their battery business. There is so much demand for batteries, for stationary application, for home storage systems, for solar power, for utilities, for companies, for data centers that need power backup. So the battery business is definitely a positive for Tesla. And they did a record amount of battery shipments in 2025. And in 2026, that'll probably also be a great bright spot for the company. Automotive sales, which again are about 80+% of Tesla's global revenue, that's going to be flat. And so when you see where the stock is, and a PE of say 300 or 400 times expected earnings, that's where there's this disconnect. The stock is riding solely on the belief that many investors have that Elon can deliver fantastic new businesses for the company. And again, these would be the robotics, robotaxi, AI. Those businesses didn't contribute meaningful revenue in 2025. So it's literally going from like 0 to 60 in pretty short order. Can Tesla sell humanoid robots at some point? Sure. Can it, have a functional robotaxi at some point? Most likely. It's just those are harder to predict the timetable on. Cars and batteries are solid businesses. Like they're very concrete and you can understand them and they generate a lot of revenue. Batteries is going in the right direction. Cars are not.
This story really is a story of Tesla's growth or lack thereof, right? There's a surplus of plant capacity that's not being utilized from the company. I'm curious how this piece, though, fits into the larger Tesla puzzle that you've been reporting on now. You've been reporting on Tesla for 20 years. You and I have been talking about it for months. How does this piece fit into the puzzle?
This is an interesting juncture because, again, Musk, it is almost as if he's gotten bored with the electric vehicle space. It is clearly not what interests him the most at this point. Optimus and robotaxi are definitely things he talks about much more. So that's where his head has moved. The company this year may come out finally with a commercial version of its semi-truck, which was unveiled back in, it's been already 9 years ago when that was promised. It is so far behind schedule. By the time it arrives, it's sort of like, it's arriving at the wrong time because now that space, electric trucks are very difficult. Hauling goods long distances in a semi-truck powered solely by a battery is a little challenging. The infrastructure that needs to be set up to keep those vehicles charged up is expensive. The operational zone will be limited, and Tesla is opening a new 50,000 unit plant just to build the Semi later this year at its Gigafactory in Nevada. When that was announced a while back, that seemed like, oh, that's probably a smart move. Since that time, the federal government has pulled back on support for electric trucks. That market is at the moment, I mean, people look at like EV sales in the US slowing. It's nothing compared to the drop for electric commercial vehicles. So it's hitting at the wrong time. This issue of overcapacity probably only gets worse when the Tesla Semi plant opens up, because the market that he anticipated when this thing was announced, it's not there. So there are, we're not seeing smart, prescient moves in terms of where the bets were made. In the case of Tesla Semi, much like with Cybertruck, there was an overestimate of how much demand there would be for this type of product. And so I think one of the real challenges that I see, and this is an issue that is new and different for Tesla, is Musk's apparent lack of interest in the automotive business, in the EV business, which is what built the brand. There are ramifications from that. The underinvestment in an exciting new product, the inability to or unwillingness or whatever to want to compete with the Chinese, with BYD and NIO and all the hot, fast-growing Chinese EV makers. It's almost as if Tesla's already thrown in the towel on that, and they're just going to ride out and milk their existing products as long as they can until something new comes along. And that's kind of the period we're entering right now. Now, you can bet, I believe Tesla's going to dominate in robotaxi and robots, and so I'm going to buy the stock. Okay, the stock's already at a pretty high premium. The expectation of endless growth and Elon's ability to always come up with some new idea or product that's going to be a game changer. He had some great hits and some great success. It's getting tougher to predict right now where things are going. And I think that's really where we are. I think 2026 is going to be an interesting year for the company, because I think directionally, underinvestment in automotive, heavy investment in things like robots and robotaxi, which are unproven bets. And then you have something arriving like the Tesla Semi, which at this point is really sort of after the fact. It's like it's hitting at the wrong time. If it had come out like 3 or 4 years ago, they probably would have built up a bigger market. And just to point out, the commercial truck industry, semi trucks, is really small compared to the personal light vehicle market. I mean, the U.S. consumers bought 16 million and change new vehicles. In China, it's like 30 million personal vehicles. The trucking market in the United States, it's maybe like a few 100,000 that sell per year. So the addressable market is not that big. So even if they sell 50,000 Tesla semis in a year, which would be spectacular, that's about it. Like, that's the ceiling. So it is questionable why they poured the resources into that product that doesn't really have that much growth potential. So again, I think we're seeing a lot of misfires like that.
Well, I think that means we certainly have a lot of conversations in store for 2026, to say the least. Well, Alan, thank you so much for your reporting. I always enjoy our chats. Until next time.
Thanks, Brittany. Good to be with you.